All right, Indiana defeats Penn State 83-78 Wednesday at Assembly Hall. I'm Jack Ankony, joined by Todd Golden with our Indiana Hoosiers on SI postgame reaction video. And Todd, going into this one, Indiana was coming off the big win over Purdue on Sunday, the win that sort of made the NCAA tournament look more attainable, I think, than it has really in a long time. But Indiana, of course, needed to build on that with more wins, going forward. And Penn State gave Indiana all it could handle. I think you expect that from a lot of these Mike Rhodes teams. They play hard on defense, a lot of pressure. They got some guys that can make threes. Ace Baldwin's one of the better point guards in the Big Ten. I think we've talked a lot about this season about Indiana not really making plays down the stretch, but this one was sort of one where, you could sort of boil it down to it was a back and forth game for most of it, and Indiana made a few more shots than Penn State did down the stretch. I mean, what do you think was different kind of to change that narrative in this one?
Yeah, no question. I mean, you think back to the games that Indiana was not able to pull out here at Assembly Hall, the Maryland game, the Michigan game, the which game am I leaving out? One of the
UCLA was close too. Yeah,
came down to the last second shot. There were possessions here and there where they either made mistakes or something didn't go their way. Tonight, they took advantage of those late possessions and made Penn State put pressure on Penn State on the defensive end a little bit better than they had for most of the game, and made some winning plays. And it's a cliche, but it is something that this team was able to pull out of itself tonight, because you're right, Penn State really pushed Indiana to the limit. Penn State was fighting for the Big Ten tournament lives, so they had something to play for tonight, and showed everybody here something. But Indiana responded because they're also playing for something bigger, and they, loss tonight would have really squandered all the good of the Purdue win on Sunday. So for Indiana to be able to pull that out, good thing for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and so there were more starting lineup changes in this one. That's kind of been a theme in the last couple of weeks. Woodson's kind of been trying to tinker with that, I think, to create better starts, is what Yasir Roseman said in one of the radio shows. Was that's kind of been an issue, that they need to get off to better starts. And, they didn't really get off to a better start tonight. They were down 7-1, but kind of, came back quickly. Malik Renew was out with an illness. Miles Rice came off the bench, so Indiana went with Galloway, Leal, Goody, Mbako, and Ballo. Good to see Mackenzie Mbako bounce back in this one, 13 points after not scoring against Purdue. That's kind of continued his season of sort of just going up and down. I thought Trey Galloway and Miles Rice made the big shots down the stretch. Galloway made those pair of three-pointers to kind of give Indiana some breathing room, and then Rice made that corner three. We were talking before we recorded this one. This was kind of a puzzling game from Galloway and Rice, and that they had a lot of turnovers, but they also made the key shots. I mean, how do you sort of, what do you sort of take away from a game like that from them?
It's the most Trey. My column hasn't been published yet, but it's about to be. It's the most Trey Galloway game of all time. He had 16 points, which is a season high.
Yep.
He had 9 assists, which is also tied a season high. He made 4 3-pointers, which ties a career high, and he had 6 turnovers, which tied a career high. So I don't know. I can't think of a more Trey Galloway game than that. There's always been a little bit of bad with the good.
Yeah.
But when it mattered most, he was really good, and his effort that he always gives paid off. He was key on some defensive possessions against Penn State. He had the nice ball. Ace Baldwin made a turnover. He slipped in the lane after Miles Rice made a corner three.
Yep.
Ball came out to Trey and did a nice job of kind of being Johnny on the spot to toss the ball up court to Miles Rice, who was all by himself to give Indiana, I think it was a 7-point lead at that point. So he does all the good effort things, and a lot of it paid off for Indiana tonight in a good way. Most of those turnovers came in the first half.
Yeah, I think he had 4 really quick.
Yeah, he did. And you never want to give a mulligan to any team, but based on what little we know about Malik Renew's condition, I mean, Malik took part in shoot around today, which is normally a sign that you're going to play, obviously, and something happened with his illness between shoot around and game time. He was here tonight. Some people saw him, but he had to be taken to the emergency room for a condition that we don't know what that is. But from a game prep standpoint, obviously they were thinking he was going to play. So to pull a starter out like that when all your game, it basically throws your game plan completely out of skew. So I'm sure, not to make excuses, but that probably had a little bit to do with Indiana's, kind of uneven start. So, but once they got into a rhythm and once they got into a rotation that they were comfortable with, it really was a back and forth game. It was an entertaining game. Yeah. I mean, it was from a pure entertainment standpoint. This was anybody who came here to Assembly Hall tonight got their money's worth. It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, Galloway, as we mentioned, so he finished 4 for 5 from 3, and I posted this during the game that he was 4 for 24 from 3 in his last 5 games going into this one. So to go 4 for 5 is obviously a huge boost for Indiana. He'd been only shooting just above 25% from 3 in Big Ten play. So anytime you can get kind of that big performance is obviously big. You were talking about Renew being out today. I thought Umar Ballo stepped up and really played well. I was sort of noticing in the first half, it felt like he was getting into some trouble when he was sort of slowly and methodically trying to back down Niederhauser. Niederhauser kind of blocked a few of his shots, but I think you wrote about this earlier in the season. Ballo is almost impossible to stop if you just get him to seal off his defender and go up quickly or give him a lob, get him on the move. Yeah. I thought they adjusted and really did a much better job with that in the second half. And then when he did feel the defense coming, he didn't just, keep backing down his defender. He made some nice passes out of the post. He had 5 assists tonight. I think he assisted either Galloway or Goody on one of the threes, had that little drop off to Mbako. So a game that you don't have Malik Renew, that could be troublesome, but I thought Ballo stepped up and played well tonight too.
He was really good. It was a fascinating matchup to watch him go against Yannick Conan Niederhauser because they're totally different styles of post players. Niederhauser is, how do I describe him to fans who he's not as big as Dawson Garcia in terms of width, but he's kind of lanky.
Mm-hmm. And, very long arms.
And, kind of has sort of a similar game, I guess. I mean, he'll stretch it out once in a while.
Yeah.
Not often.
Probably doesn't, yeah.
And sometimes Omar Ballo has trouble with players like that. And there were times where Niederhauser got the better of him.
Yeah.
But he stuck with it and was a key component on the boards, obviously, tonight. Had a big offensive rebound late to keep a possession alive, forced Penn State to foul. That was a big one when they were hoping to get a stop and a bucket. I know fans complain about Omar because once in a while he has the countenance of not giving effort, but I don't think anybody should really have much to complain about with him this year. I think he's basically delivered what people expected of him. As we've talked about before, he's very difficult to stop when he's on the roll, on pick and roll. And, he was pretty good tonight. And I think, for the most part, he's been pretty good all year.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, he's basically been, I think going into the year, you knew that he was going to be very good at a few things. He's going to use his size very well. He's going to outmuscle guys. He's going to be very efficient around the rim. But he has his deficiencies too. He's not a Kalel Ware or a Trace Jackson Davis who can either step out and hit a three or handle the ball. So he's kind of, he's different in that respect, but I think he's been what Indiana has expected on the large.
He's sneaky good defensively too. He doesn't pile up the shot blocks like Kalel did last year, where he was real. Kalel was so intimidating with the way, the manner of his shot blocking.
Yeah.
Omar Ballo doesn't block as many shots, but because he's so big, it's still a no-go zone in terms of driving to the rim without a screen or anything like that. So he does the job defensively, and he had a tough matchup tonight. Yeah. Niederhauser impressed me.
I think he was like second in the Big Ten in blocks going into this one.
Yeah, he's a good player. A nice player that they found from Northern Illinois, and he's going to be pretty good if he sticks around at Penn State. But there was I thought Kanan Carlisle was good tonight. When they put him in the game, there were some good performances in there. Indiana is Indiana. They're not always consistent, and there were some times where they let Penn State off the hook. But when it mattered, they were on their game and, were able to get a win that in a game they really couldn't afford to lose.
Yeah, so Indiana had 5 players in double figures tonight. We obviously mentioned Ballo and Galloway and Rice, but Mbako had the 13, Goody with 10. He's sort of been pretty reliable for getting you 2 or 3 3-pointers every night. felt like Ace Baldwin was really trying to carry this team to the finish line. He had 22 points, 6 steals, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. I mean, he was great, and that was, with the he kind of celebrated and did some sort of gesture at the fans, and they were booing him and chanting, F you, Ace Baldwin, down the stretch. And so I was impressed, from a mental standpoint, handling that, and also physically, what he was able to do.
I've spoken with Ace Baldwin a couple times, and he strikes me as the kind of guy who would take that level of attention from the opposing students the way you'd want to, in the sense of, I'm in their head. They're paying me a compliment by, demonstrating their irritation at me. He has some swagger. I like Ace Baldwin.
He's a great game.
He did make a few mistakes tonight, but mostly he was very difficult for Indiana to handle. He didn't play well when they played at the Palestra earlier this year, but he kind of reminds me in some ways. I don't think he's quite as good, but of the he's an irritant in the way Boo Buie was for Northwestern. Different kind of game, but same kind of impact. And I know the fans were all over his case tonight, but he was. If you had to pick the best player on the floor, he was probably it for either team tonight.
Yeah, you probably could say that. Other key stat for Indiana: 10 for 15 from three. What'd you say that was their best percentage in a long time?
It's been several years since they've shot the ball that well. Yeah. So that's a great sign for the Hoosiers that the 3-point shots are falling. They need them to, and they needed them tonight. I mean, get a couple of those 3-pointers to fall, and we're talking a different story here tonight.
Well, especially when you shoot 15 for 25 from the line.
I was about to say that the first thing that popped into my mind is there was a lot of missed free throws tonight. And, so those threes had even more impact because they kind of had to make up for that to some degree. So, so hopefully Indiana could get it together at the line. These road games coming up, you want to be able to be shooting well at the line. So we'll see what happens out west.
Yep. So with this win, Indiana improves to 17-11 overall, 8-9 in Big Ten play. For as ugly as things got about a month ago, even a couple of weeks ago, they've still put themselves in position to where I think if they can win 2 of these next 3, they feel pretty good about their chances going into the Big Ten tournament. I think Lenardi and some other bracketology people had them either as a last 4 out or a first 4 team in going into this one. Oregon would be a quad 1 win if they can get that, but I don't think Washington would be. And Ohio State is kind of on that borderline for a home game. So I guess just how do you see Indiana's sort of tournament outlook kind of as we head into the home stretch with 3 left?
Still have no margin for error. I mean, this game could only have hurt them tonight.
Yeah.
So to win is sort of, doing what you got to do to get to give yourself a chance. It doesn't really help them much in terms of their bubble status, and neither will, frankly, the game at Washington because the Huskies have struggled so much. Game next week at Oregon's a big one.
Yep.
I mean, that's a quad 1 opportunity. Ohio State at home, obviously similar to this game. I think Ohio State slipped from that being a quad 1 home game. You got to be top 30 to be quad 1 home game. And so Indiana probably isn't going to be able to relax until we know what their status is going into the Big Ten tournament. I still think they're going to have to win a game at the Big Ten tournament, unless they win out.
Yeah, like if they get to Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, they I still think to feel really safe, they're going to need to win a game up at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But you got to take it. I hate to go into coach speak, but you do have to take it one game at a time. And this was the one game they had to take care of. And they don't have any margin for error, but so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you got to give this team a lot of credit for all that they've gone through this year with having to announce that Woodson will step down after the year. And I think they'd lost 8 of 10, 5 in a row at one point, to sort of just recognize that, hey, there's still something to play for. Like, we haven't met the expectations that we had and that everyone had going into the season of, being a Big Ten contender. And, I think the top 15 team in the preseason. But I think that sort of just speaks to kind of the leadership on the team and the coaching staff to still kind of block it out and be playing for something at the end of the year.
Well, it's a lesson in the fact that the noise that we all hear from fans isn't always reality. I mean, that's not necessarily the reality in the locker room. Seems like the players are playing for Mike Woodson, which, I've seen teams go the other way. I mean, It doesn't always happen like that. So in that sense, Woodson deserves some credit too, because, this is a team, we've talked about it before. This is a team basically made up of if you want to look at it a certain way, guys who came here for, some nice NIL money. It's not the only reason they came, but it's what attracted them here. And when you have a team built on that principle, I mean, it could easily go, everybody can kind of fend for themselves. So to the credit of both the players and the coaching staff, they have not. And I think this team deserves a lot of, as you said, a lot of credit for, not giving in to, well, we're done.
Yeah.
Let's just get this over with, which a lot of fans gave into that. But, it's never over till it's over. And Indiana is giving themselves a chance to, have a positive outcome to this season, which really is all. It's not going to be the outcome that people wanted. They're not going to win the Big Ten, but, it's not going to be the worst case scenario either. At least we don't think it will be. So we'll see. I mean, as I said on our podcast the other day, it's Indiana. So nothing that they do from the rest of the season, good or bad, is going to surprise me much. But they've given themselves a chance, and that's all you can ask for.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So, like I said, Indiana with this one, they're now 17-11, 8-9 in the Big Ten. They head out west now. They play at Washington on Saturday. That's a 6 Eastern game, 3 Pacific. I'll be out there for doing our post-game reaction video and providing some coverage from out there. But I think we'll wrap this one up. Indiana gets a big 83-78 win, big in the respect of it was one that they couldn't really afford to lose. So, kind of keeping their tournament hopes alive from that respect. But I think that'll do it. For Todd Golden, I've been Jack Ankony with our Indiana Hoosiers on SI post-game reaction video, and we'll talk to you Saturday at Washington. See ya.